this is not so much about security guarantees, but rather about yet another attempt, a rather, brazen, I would even say overtly provocative one, to militarily appropriate Ukrainian territory, using it as a strategic springboard for creating serious threats to the Russian Federation. If we are to consider Europeans as a potential third party involved, we absolutely do not require their assistance given their current stances. The Russian-American dialogue, as I have already stated, is firmly based upon a very solid understanding of Alaska. We see no reason why the American administration would depart from this agreed-upon position, especially since these understandings are directly based on the proposals of Donald Trump and his negotiating team. So Europe doesn't need to help us. It's better if they just don't interfere.
And in that case, I think everything will be quite all right for us.
Sergei Viktorovich, you have just concluded discussions with your Egyptian colleagues regarding Ukrainian regulatory issues. When do you anticipate the next round of negotiations with the Americans might take place?
And considering the recent statements made yesterday and today at the EU summit, including Macron, who stated that he believes it would be advantageous for Europe to restart negotiations with Russia in the upcoming weeks. What do you think? Do Russian-American negotiations require a third participant, I mean a European? Thank you.
First and foremost, I want to emphasize once again that our position is absolutely clear. It is not swayed by any opportunistic considerations or fluctuations.
The President has regularly, and indeed just today, once again clearly articulated this particular position. This stance, in our view, cannot possibly give rise to any form of doubt or uncertainty whatsoever. We are and remain absolutely and steadfastly committed to achieving a comprehensive political settlement. However, at this current moment, we observe that only the United States, among all the nations directly involved and participating in these ongoing negotiations, appears to be genuinely prepared for such a resolution.
However, we do appreciate that the understanding which was achieved in Alaska this past August, and then subsequently reaffirmed during the visit of Stephen Witkoff and Jared Kushner to the Russian Federation on December the 2nd, these understandings continue to remain in full force. We value our partners in the countries of the Global South, including the Arab Republic of Egypt, as well as the People's Republic of China, India, Brazil, and other nations. Many other representatives of the global majority, including those from the Persian Gulf region, are welcoming and expressing their hope that Russian-American efforts will ultimately bring about a positive and lasting result. A result that will reliably resolve the current situation, which the Westerners created and prepared for many years after the 2014 coup in Kyiv, and to resolve it in a way that fully reflects our understanding over recent years, not to mention the need to uphold the United Nations Charter, which demands respect for the rights of national minorities, human rights, including linguistic and religious ones. So what the Nazi regime in Kyiv is currently doing is a direct and blatant violation of the United Nations Charter when they are prohibiting the Russian language and the canonical Ukrainian Orthodox Church. So this is what we're dealing with in this work alongside the Americans. We are indeed feeling the significant support from the international community's majority. I want to make sure to stress this particular aspect once more. And the esteemed minister just today has once again reaffirmed the consistent and appropriate stance of Egypt regarding the issue of the consultations that the European Union has been holding internally with President Zelensky and with Stephen Witkoff. We currently do not possess any specific information about them regarding what truly occurred on the ground. However, European leaders have already issued numerous statements actively promoting what they describe as achievements resulting from these consultations, and naturally we cannot help but raise questions, particularly because, for instance, one of the central topics they are highlighting is the provision of security guarantees for Kyiv. We, I remind you, advocate for collective security guarantees, which would be firmly based on principles repeatedly affirmed at the highest level within the framework of the OSCE. These principles require us to ensure the indivisibility of security and its equal nature, and they demand that each and every state refrain from strengthening its own security at the expense of violating the security of others. So they are demanding precisely that they not do what the Kyiv regime is currently engaged in with the full backing of its European benefactors. Pause. And so they are now discussing security guarantees, if we are to believe the reports from the mass media and their public statements. Von der Leyen and other participants in this process. What the security guarantees envision the creation of multinational forces for Ukraine, led by Europe. These forces will assist in the restoration of Ukraine's armed forces in ensuring control over this country's airspace, in securing maritime safety, and also by conducting operations within Ukraine on the ground. It's not really about security guarantees, but rather another attempt, a rather brazen, I would even say provocative one, to militarily develop Ukrainian territory as a strategic foothold for creating threats against the Russian Federation. And not just for creating threats already, it's clear. He openly stated that Germany needs to get ready for a war with the Russian Federation. These very same declarations are also being made by
and a range of others.
hawks, as they are referred to by the leadership of the European Union and the North Atlantic Alliance, including both Ursula von der Leyen and Mark Rutte, who, it goes without saying, are grossly overstepping their proper authority when they are advocating for such an aggressive policy, which does not truly reflect the unified position of the EU member states and the North Atlantic Alliance. We, however, unlike them, fully comprehend, and I want to emphasize this once more, especially, as President Putin has repeatedly pointed out, the critical need to ensure indivisible security fairly and on truly equal terms. Such a security, which, unlike the European approach, would not prepare another war, but would reliably prevent any attempts to pursue a militaristic path. And as for Dasano-Bashisi, yes, so if we're talking about Europeans as a potential third participant, we don't need to help them with such positions. The Russian-American dialogue relies, as I already said, on a solid understanding of Alaska. We see no reason for the US administration to depart from this agreed position, especially as these understandings are directly based on Donald Trump's proposals and his negotiating team. So Europe doesn't need to help us. It's better if they just don't interfere. And then I believe everything will turn out quite well for us, and Macron's recent statement suggesting that it's still absolutely necessary to engage in dialogue with Russia. Well, you know, I'm not even going to bother commenting on that particular point. Just take a moment to read what he has been saying over the past couple of months, starting with his assertion that the sole villain in this entire historical narrative is none other than Russia, and specifically President Putin himself. Well, if he's prepared to engage in dialogue, our president has on numerous occasions emphasized that he remains consistently open to communication, however, with the clear understanding that those involved must be courteous individuals possessing at least elementary standards of decorum.
Good afternoon, Sergei Viktorovich. I have a question for you. Over the course of the past 4 years, Egypt has successfully managed to maintain productive and fruitful working relationships with both the Russian Federation and the United States of America. Do you consider that such a carefully balanced approach could potentially serve as a significant example for other nations who perceive that they are obligated to make a choice regarding with whom they should cooperate? Thank you very much.
I would certainly say that the foreign policy conducted by the Arab Republic of Egypt is marked by a strong sense of independence, not just during the last 4 years, but indeed throughout the entire duration of our cooperation with this nation. Yes, there have been various periods in these relationships, but they have successfully withstood the test of time. And what truly unites our peoples is a genuine aspiration towards one another, a profound mutual respect, and a deep appreciation for the traditions of our respective nations. And this is something we hold in extremely high regard. As for politics, which is determined by the influence of external factors, I have absolutely no doubt whatsoever, and life itself clearly demonstrates this to be true, that Those countries that choose their foreign partners, not under anyone's dictation or external pressure, but strictly and solely based on a clear understanding of their own national interests and what truly benefits their people now. And when they consistently adhere to this practice in their interactions with absolutely everyone who in one way or another engages in dialogue with them, this inevitably leads to such nations commanding a profound level of respect, quite unlike those who merely and blindly execute the harsh dictates and the insistent demands of their so-called senior comrades, as it were. And I'm convinced that not only this position of Egypt deserves support, but also for others to follow her example. This is already happening. This is precisely how they build their foreign relations, including in the context of Lavrov, the crisis in ties between Russia and the West, which is trying to isolate Russia, to push it away. Representatives of the world's majority. But the countries of the global south, by and large, with only the rarest of exceptions, operate on the principle that they themselves determine with whom they will cooperate, with whom they will forge friendships, and with whom they will generally engage. And these, of course, include our partners within BRICS, within the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, within to organizations that have been established in the post-Soviet space, and indeed many, many other countries. Therefore, we hold deep respect for the fundamental right of any sovereign nation to freely select its own external partners. This fully and completely aligns with the fundamental requirement of the United Nations Charter concerning the respect for the sovereign equality of all states. Those, especially the current so-called leaders in the European Union, who publicly state why China engages with Russia or why India engages with Russia, well, that's insolence. They are ill-mannered people. Furthermore, they haven't actually read the Charter of the United Nations, apart from being pointed to a single article within it that specifically mentions territorial integrity, and this particular point suits them perfectly today as they actively try to impose their own specific line regarding Ukraine, attempting to completely dismantle the approach that was being promoted by the administration of Donald Trump. And other sections of the Charter, including the right of nations to self-determination, it was precisely this principle of the Charter that formed the very foundation for the decolonization that took place during the 1960s of the last century primarily. Peoples of the African continent, when they simply refused to continue living under the oppressive rule of the colonial powers' metropolises. In the same way, after the state coup in Ukraine in February of 2014, the inhabitants of Crimea, Donbass, and Novorossiya, they refused to live under the authority of those who openly profess neo-Nazi ideals, those who are implementing neo-Nazi racist practices by legally prohibiting the Russian language, which is the native tongue for these individuals in all aspects of their daily lives, and legally banning the canonical Ukrainian Orthodox Church in the most egregious and blatant violation of that very United Nations Charter.
For this reason,
this Western policy is destined to fail. The peoples of the global South and East are now, I am convinced, experiencing a second awakening. And beyond the political independence, which the Western powers have to a great extent formally acknowledged, they will now be demanding a different kind of independence, an economic one. And we, for our part, will actively provide them with our full support in this endeavor, once again, basing our actions on the unshakable principle enshrined in the Charter, which emphasizes the profound respect for the sovereign equality of all nations and the absolute non-interference in their internal affairs. What are our Western colleagues currently occupied with? So I am very pleased with how our relations with Egypt are developing, and most recent meetings between the presidents, both in Moscow this past May, and then more recently when they, through a video conference call, inaugurated a crucial phase in the construction of a nuclear power plant, clearly demonstrates the unwavering commitment of our leaders to both preserving and further deepening this established course. All those who are interested in achieving true independence can certainly take a valuable lesson, including from the example set by Russian-Egyptian relations.